Hi guys, today we're going to be doing another reaction video, and today will be reaction to an animation of a girl that ran away from home but returned home years later but with 50 children. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into the video.
I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I guess I had a childhood that most people can only dream about. We lived in a mansion with sweeping staircases, an indoor and outdoor pool, a tennis court, and a lovely big garden where my mom used to throw her lavish parties. I remember having a huge dollhouse, and I got a pony for my first birthday. My parents bred and trained the fastest racehorses in the country. So that's how I spent my childhood, along with thoroughbreds and all the toys that money could buy. It was a great time. I was an only child, but I wasn't lonely. With a house full of maids and nannies everywhere, I had all the company I needed. My dad, my mom, and my Aunt Jenny were there always ready to play with me. Aunt Jenny was my mom's sister. She was married to Uncle Jimmy, but I rarely saw him.
Creepiness is
My
peeking his
birthday
head around the
parties were
door.
amazing. We had a real circus in the garden for my 7th birthday, complete with jugglers, lions, and acrobats. When I turned 8, my dad rented the whole theme park for me and my classmates. All the princesses were there to sing my happy birthday song. It was so magical. When it got too hot in the summer, my family and I got on my dad's private jet and headed off to the slopes where I learned to ski. Then it was off to Paris and Milan to buy my lovely dresses and handmade shoes. One shop even made my own personalized perfume. It was called Princess Grace, and it was named after me.
Wow.
Princess Grace, that's what everybody called me. I guess I was kind of a princess, the heir to an empire. If you click the like and subscribe buttons, you'll turn into a real-life princess too. Don't forget to leave a comment below. One day, just after I turned 13, my parents decided to visit a ranch abroad to look at some horses. I wanted to come along, but it was a busy time in school. Don't worry, my mom told me the night before they left. Aunt Jenny will stay with you the whole time. It was a good thing that she was there. 2 days after my parents left, we got a chilling phone call. My parents were ambushed on the way to the ranch. They were being held for ransom.
Not good.
My life that was so peaceful and pleasant was suddenly full of fear. I saw more and more of Uncle Jimmy as he talked to the police. Finally, he decided to give in to the ransom demands. We had to sell our entire ranch and our house too.
Oh, bless him.
I have decided to give in to their demands so I can save the lives of your parents, he said. I told Uncle Jim to give the kidnappers anything they wanted. I wanted my parents to be safe, and I wanted them back home. Be strong, princess, Aunt Jenny said while hugging me tight. But the news got worse and worse. After selling everything, I heard the most terrible news. The kidnappers got the ransom they wanted, but my parents never came home. I never saw them again. I was devastated.
That's actually really sad.
I couldn't believe what was happening. I clung to Aunt Jenny and we both sobbed. Uncle Jimmy looked stressed and angry. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I was trapped in a torture chamber in my brain that was still trying to grasp the fact that my parents were dead. When I finally woke up from my nightmare, I was already 14 years old and living in Aunt Jenny's house. But the Aunt Jenny that I knew had changed.
This was a little bit more upsetting than I expected.
She was always so chatty and happy before my parents died. Now, she was always quiet. I could tell that she was scared a lot, more often than not when Uncle Jimmy was home. One day, I understood why. The reason why Aunt Jenny was always over at our house back then was because Uncle Jimmy had a terrible temper. He used to hit Aunt Jenny, so she ran to my mom. Now, there was no escaping Uncle Jimmy. There was no escape for her. There was no escape even for me. One day, Uncle Jimmy got home drunk. Even before saying anything, he swung his arm and hit Aunt Jenny in the face. He threw her against the wall and started screaming. Now we have this brat to feed? She's not worth anything anymore. Aunt Jenny was shaking.
Wow.
I was shaking too.
Just
when Uncle Jimmy
out
turned around to get another drink from the cupboard, he turned to me and whispered, "Run, princess, run away." I didn't know what else to do. How could I leave? Where could I go?
No, you get him and you just yeet him out the door.
While packing up some loose change, I heard Aunt Jenny screaming in the kitchen. Then there was silence. The silence was more terrible than anything I have ever heard. I heard Uncle Jimmy stomping to my room. My only option was to jump out of the window. So I ran away. I was scared for myself, but I was also scared for Aunt Jenny. I walked to the bus station and took the first bus out of there. When I got off again, it was in a whole new and unfamiliar place. I realized that I had no idea what to do next. "Hey, miss," someone cried out to me in the street. "Do you want to share my cardboard bed tonight?" It was a homeless man.
Well, at
He
least
looked
he's
scary
being,
and
like,
dirty. I've never been out on
friendly
the
and
streets by myself alone at night.
wanting to help.
"Leave that kid alone," someone else cried. "Are you lost, kid? Do you need help to go back home?" I shook my head and I ran as fast as I could.
At least
I
that
didn't
homeless
know
guy
where
was
I
really
running
polite
to,
and
though. That
offering
night,
to
I
help.
slept on a bench in the park. It was narrow and uncomfortable. I had
Although I
to
wouldn't
pull my jacket
advise
over my head so
randomly
I could
staying
get
with
some
somebody
rest.
you do not know.
When I woke up, my shoes were gone. My backpack was gone too. It had all the money I had left. I was now completely broke, homeless, and hungry. I didn't know what to do. I wandered around the streets with my bare feet. Only after a few steps, I stepped on something sharp and I cried out. My foot was bleeding.
Oh no.
"Hey!" cried the same voice I heard the night before. I turned to look. It was a girl who looked barely older than me. She was pushing a grocery cart. "Be careful where you step. There's a lot of nasty things on the ground and that cut's going to get infected." She led me to another bench. Then she brought out some antiseptic and bandages from the cart and began to clean my foot.
See,
"You
now
better
she
find a way
seems
to
really
get some
friendly.
shoes, kid," she said. "You won't survive life on the streets without them." I nodded, but I kept quiet. I got a chill when I heard her say, "life on the streets." I guess this was my life now. She pointed me to some trash bins in a nearby alley. "That's the back of the department store," she said. "Sometimes they throw stuff out. They don't need it and they don't sell it, but it's a treasure for the rest of us." So I limped to the alley. There were a lot of trash bins to go through, but I found a pair of shoes with ripped out soles. "You can use some tape to wrap around the shoes," the girl said. "Here, I've got some in my cart." She was so helpful. I was still kind of scared of her, but she was being good to me. "Thank you so much," I said. "What's your name?" She told me that she had a nice name once, when she still had a home. But now everyone called her Emmy. Emmy, short for emergency. I make it a point to fill my cart with emergency things, just in case someone needs it. I guess you needed it now. "What's your name, kid?" I was about to open my mouth and say Princess Grace, but I wasn't a princess anymore. "My name is Grace,"
Aw.
I whispered softly. Suddenly, Emmy laughed. "Grace isn't a tough enough name for a life on the street. There's no Grace found here. You look like you just ran away from home. You've got to be stronger if you want to live here." So Emmy gave me another name, Athena. She
Athena,
told me
that's
that
a
if I
pretty cool
couldn't
name,
go
to be
back
fair.
home, I'd have to be as brave as the great goddess of war. And it was war out there. We lived in alleyways and dumpsters. Emmy told me that a lot of people threw good food away. There was always something to eat from the trash if I got there before the rats did. I wanted to cry and scream. This place was filthy and disgusting. I wasn't going to eat someone else's leftover food. I wasn't going to fish out a half-eaten sandwich from the trash. Emmy must have seen the disgust on my face. She slapped me. "Stop acting like you're above it all. If you've got no place to go, then this is it for you. We all have to eat." I vowed to myself that I wasn't going to stoop that low. I wasn't
Kind
an
of feel
animal
for a
who
little
had to
bit because
fight
she
for
went from
scraps
having
of
so
food.
much to having
There's
so
a shop in
little.
Milan that used to make my signature perfume, for crying out loud. But as the hours passed, I got hungry. Nobody was coming to bring me a crunchy grilled sandwich and a soup on a silver platter. The only silver in my life was a trash bin now. So before the sun set that day, I found myself ankle deep in filth,
Why doesn't she try and get a
desperately
job?
looking for anything to eat in the trash cans behind a diner. I got to a half-full
Surely she can get
takeaway
herself a
box
job.
just in time. The busboy of the restaurant came out and shooed me away. I managed to eat all the food without gagging. I was so
Me after I eat food.
By now, I was pretty filthy too.
I literally blew it
And to
out that
make
much
things
as
worse,
well.
it started to rain. There were no dry benches for me to sleep on that night, so I kept on walking until I saw Emmy's cart again. I spied a raincoat tucked into the very bottom. I thought that since I already got some shoes and food from somewhere, I could take the raincoat too. But Emmy caught me and she slapped me again. "We don't steal from each other," she screamed. "Yes, we rummage
You
around
should have
for
at least
food like
asked.
animals, but we're still civilized people." She looked utterly crazy. I was getting so scared of her.
Yeah, her
She
eyes
looked
do
like
look a
she
little
was ready
bit
to
crazy
bite
right
me.
now.
Emmy grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me so hard. I started to cry. I called out for my mother. Emmy suddenly stopped. She was breathing so hard and crying too. She let me go. She slumped down on the wet floor and sobbed. "I'm sorry, kid. That's what my foster parents used to do to me when I stole food from the kitchen," she said. "You can share my tent tonight." I thought I would be too
Bless
scared
her.
to close my eyes, but one whole day on the street was
So
too
you've got
much
two
for
girls,
me.
one from a
The
really
moment
rich
that my head hit
family
the
and
floor,
one that was from
I
foster
slept.
care.
When I woke up the next day, Emmy decided that she needed to teach me the rules. First of all, there were more
If
kids
they're
there
homeless,
than
where
I
did the
initially
whiteboard come
thought.
from?
There seemed to be around 50 of us just roaming the streets of the city. They were all runaways of some sort. Some from abusive homes, some escaped from orphanages. Emmy was actually older than me. She was already 15.
And I love how
she's
her
been on the
eyebrow
street
is
since
just
she was
showing on top of
12.
that bit of
I
hair.
left my foster family. I never want to go back. Now I'm just trying to forget my past, but I don't know if I have a future, Emmy said. That's why we have to take care of each other somehow. She introduced me to the people there. Even if they had foul breath, patched up clothes, and filthy hair, they were still people. They weren't animals. They weren't monsters. My foster parents were the monsters.
On O2, get the latest phones
Just
at
an
the lowest
ad.
prices. No wonder 9 out of 10
that.
Emmy added. I bet you know some real monsters, Athena. I nodded and quietly agreed. Uncle Jimmy was a monster too. So I became a part of this ragged family. I looked pitiful and sad enough to beg. I got a lot of spare change from nicely dressed people
She
passing
could have gone and
by.
got a job though at like a
Everything I got, I
takeaway
shared it
place.
with the others. Sometimes we could afford a whole loaf of bread and some hot soup. It helped on cold nights when we couldn't light the drums for fire. There wasn't any money left for anything else, not even a pair of shoes. Some nights I thought of the lavish collection of dresses I bought from Paris. Now I looked like a rat on the street. But I changed more than just my clothes. I was braver and stronger now. I could feel like the real Athena and I could face anything. I stopped thinking about Aunt Jenny. Up to a point, I stopped thinking about losing my parents. I just had to think about how to get food the next day. I lived like this for 4 years. One day, I was looking for some old newspapers that I could use to line up my cardboard tent. That's when I saw a familiar face on the front page. It was Uncle Jimmy. He looked so much better than the last time I saw him. But the article said something about him getting married to some socialite. I guess he and Aunt
Her
Jenny
eyebrow
got
is doing it
divorced.
again.
The more I read, the more I felt shocked. The article mentioned that Uncle Jimmy was the president of a company that bred and trained racehorses. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Aunt Jenny never mentioned a business like that. But the most shocking part was when Uncle Jimmy said that he managed to save the business of his brother-in-law who tragically died overseas with his whole family. That blatant lie seemed to light a fire
That is
in my
really
head.
bad.
I was still alive,
Her eyes
although
are
I
on
had
fire.
disappeared from their lives. But how could Uncle Jimmy take over my dad's business when we had to sell everything to the kidnappers? That day, I still went out to beg.
Maybe
But when it came to splitting the
Uncle
money
was
up
the
with the rest
kidnapper.
of the kids, I didn't spend my share on food. Instead, I kept the money. I needed to save enough
Yeah,
to
maybe
buy
he
a
was
bus
the
ticket
kidnapper. That's
back
the only
home.
physical way he
After
could
2
take over the
weeks of
business.
feeling hungry, I had enough for a one-way ticket.
Unless he's
I
like
was
just
planning to go
lying in
home the
general and
next
he just
day
made
when
his own
tragedy
business
struck
and
my family again.
claiming that
It
that's
was
the
raining
taking
that
over
night.
business,
A
but you
car
never
came out
know.
of nowhere, and the roads were so slippery. It crashed just outside the alley I shared with the others. Emmy was standing with her cart, waiting for me. She didn't have enough time to run away. All at once, all the bad things that happened in my life seemed to replay themselves in my head. My
This is
parents
honestly
were
more
dead.
sad than it was
I
supposed
ran
to
away
be.
from my Aunt Jenny. I broke down sobbing on the street while the police came to check on the scene. The other kids were trying to comfort me, but I couldn't stop talking. It was like a dam opened up. I told them everything about myself, from my real name to my suspicions about Uncle Jimmy. Suddenly, a policeman came over and knelt in front of me. Then he asked me the most amazing thing. What's your complete name? How long have you been on the streets? How old are you? I still couldn't stop talking and shaking. I answered the policeman as best as I could. Then he turned and called someone on his phone. 2 hours later, after they took away Emmy's body, a car pulled up in front of my alley.
Bless her.
Grace! Princess Grace! Where are you? It was Aunt Jenny. I went out slowly. It felt like a dream. I looked at her and she looked at me for a long time. Then she pushed the filthy hair from my face. "Is it you, princess?" she whispered. I nodded, and I was shaking with sadness, relief, and happiness. "You can come home now," Aunt Jenny added.
Why
and
didn't
she led me
the
back
aunt
to the
just,
car.
like, move
I
out
found
with
out
her
a
in the
lot that
first
night.
place instead of telling her
Aunt
to
Jenny
run
was
away and live on
preparing
the
a case
streets?
against Uncle Jimmy.
A bit
But
mean.
she had to wait until their divorce was finalized. He threatened me when I finally figured it out. He never paid the ransom. He kept all the money and all the horses. He just moved them to another ranch. But he didn't know how to get rid of you. After you ran away,
What?
he wanted to find you to get rid of you too, so he could finally use the money for himself. I asked Aunt Jenny why she didn't run away from him like I did. I was too scared to run. I wasn't brave enough.
I'm
But
literally
when
sat in
Jimmy
a squat
finally met
position
that
right now.
socialite, he dropped me like a hot potato. I was finally free after getting divorced last year. I've been looking for you since then. She further explained that since they found me, I could fight Uncle Jimmy in court. Legally, everything was mine. We're
That's
going
really
to
good
win for
though.
sure,
She'll be able to go back
said
to being
Aunt
a
Jenny.
princess.
And you can get your life back. I guess she was thinking that we could move back to another mansion, having a luxurious lifestyle. But I had other plans in mind. I didn't want that kind of life anymore. Being on the streets made me realize that there are people who may look dirty, but they have clean souls. I thought of Emmy. After we get all the money back, we can buy a big house. But we won't be the only ones living there, I said to Aunt Jenny. I'm bringing all the kids with me. I can be a mother
That's really
to all
sweet
of
of
them.
her.
I can be a
Really
mother
sweet.
to all those kids in the dumpsters and alleys who think they have no place to call home.
Well, that was a lot more upsetting than I was expecting it to be. But I think the main point in this story is the girl that obviously was rich at the start and the other girl that grew up in foster care, they were still both as kind and caring towards one another. And I think that's the main point of this story. It doesn't really matter where you're from or your upbringing, you can still be the best version of yourself. And I feel like everybody should be the best version of their self and spread positivity, not hate. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below if there's any other videos you want to see me react to. And I am thinking of reacting to some of the 90 Day Fiancé series.